time now to focus our to shift our focus rather to health and nutrition, because right now we're talking about World Diabetes Day, which is being held on the 14th of November to create more awareness about this disease that is spreading even more and more these days. In fact, a lot of people don't even know that they have it. And Andrea is here to tell us a bit more about it. Andrea, always good to have you here.
Thanks.
Taking care of us, looking after our health. But I don't think many people out there realize, but how serious is diabetes?
Well, diabetes is a condition that needs to be managed because it has a severe impact on your health and quality of life. And if you look at the South African context, it's a big problem.
Okay.
At present, they say that there's about 3.5 million people in South Africa with diabetes,
Yes.
of which 2 million know it, but 1.5 is undiagnosed.
Wow.
So if you don't know that you've got diabetes, you can't do anything about it.
Yes.
And often, if you look at, there's a difference between type 1 and type 2 diabetes that I talk about.
Yes.
It may often be with type 2 diabetes that you're not really aware that there's a big problem.
Yeah.
So it's important to obviously go for a medical
Examination, have
Yes,
yourself checked.
yes,
But let's talk about
definitely.
that. So when trying to figure out whether you do have it on, what are the symptoms to look out for?
Well, one of the first symptoms that you'll experience probably is excessive thirst and increased urination. Because what happens with diabetes is that your body's not able to break down sugars and absorb it properly into your and break it down. So your body tries to flush out the extra glucose that's accumulating in your bloodstream.
Yes.
And it does that through excreting it through your urine. So often people would first notice it where there's a unusual increase in thirst and increased urination.
Yes.
So if you suffer with those symptoms, it's a good idea to go for a glucose test.
Okay. So I guess then obviously the conclusive way of knowing that you do have diabetes, whether type 1 or type 2, is to have a thorough medical examination.
Definitely, yes. And I mean, there's lots of places that one can go for a glucose test. Lots
Okay.
of pharmacies offer that as a service. A fasting glucose test is best. So if you go first thing in the morning without having breakfast,
Okay,
that will
all
give
right.
a better indication whether there's a problem or not.
And it's something that you'd advise everyone to do. I mean, whether you
Yes.
think so or not, it's
Yes,
good to
yes,
know. It's good to know.
Definitely, yes. And
So
it's an
let's-
easy, inexpensive test to do.
Yeah. Let's talk a bit about the treatment. Let's say you do have your test done and you find out you have either type 1 or type 2. How does treatment work?
Well, with type 1 diabetes, the treatment options are quite specific. Insulin is given because insulin is the hormone that's produced by your body to work the glucose, well, to basically
Break them down,
metabolize
yes.
glucose. And you don't have enough or your body can't use it properly.
Yes.
So then you need the medication specifically. And that should be under strict medical supervision. So taken very seriously. It's not
Yeah.
like you can consider natural alternatives or lifestyle changes necessarily.
But that is,
yes.
strict, like you said. I mean, I understand it because my grandmother
Oh, yes.
has actually has type 1 diabetes and she has to inject herself with insulin
That's
from
right.
time to time. Yes.
Well, type 2 diabetes can be different. In many cases, type 2 diabetics need medication as well in the form of tablets that also help the body to metabolize glucose. But in some cases, if it's detected early enough, one can probably manage it with dietary changes, weight loss, and lifestyle changes.
Okay.
And that's absolute magic because I think many years ago, diabetes was seen as a condition that relies on medical treatment alone,
Yes.
where there are some people that can probably manage it, the type
Yes.
2 diabetes, if it's at a very early stage,
Yes.
through their dietary changes.
All right.
And that's when we look at which foods are good and which foods aren't so
Let's
good.
talk about these. So what do you have? I mean, an assortment of fruit, vegetables, carbs here and there. So let's go through these foods and why they are good.
Well, basically, this is a group of whole foods. They're unprocessed, so that's the way that we should try and eat most of the time. And the problem with our diets these days is there's way too much hidden sugars. You know, we've spoken about flavored waters that people think don't contain sugar, but often contains lots of sugar. Cool drinks, sweetened foods, sweetened cereals, etc. So the first thing is to try and stay away from all those sweetened foods that contain lots of sugar without us knowing it.
Could that actually lead to you developing diabetes? Because I remember as a child, my grandmother saying, don't drink too much cool drink, which means, you know, you'll get
Yes.
sugar. Well, what diabetes is
Well,
called.
if you've got the genetic predisposition, it could probably increase your risk if you overload your body with
Oh,
extra
wow.
sugars. And what also happens is too much refined carbohydrates leads to weight gain.
Yes.
And as your body accumulates more fat, it becomes more difficult for your body to control your glucose levels, especially if there's a predisposition for diabetes. So excess intake of refined carbohydrates is definitely not a good idea. And also being overweight is another risk factor.
Yeah.
So these are the types of foods we need to eat.
Lentils, what are these?
Oh, those are black beans. You know, if you look at lentils and beans specifically, they are wonderful because they are low glycemic index foods.
Yes.
And, you know, that's a food that if you eat it, it doesn't cause a spike in your glucose levels. It's rather metabolized slowly, and there's a sustained release of energy in your body.
Yes.
And by incorporating pulses like lentils and beans into your daily diet,
Pulses,
yes, can have or they call them legumes. Pulses, legumes, lentils, beans. You know, that's
That
the sort
group
of
of family.
category. Yes.
Yes.
So they are valuable in the diet of a diabetic because they really help the body also to sort of manage glucose levels better. So it's a better dietary choice.
Lovely.
And in
Thank you for
summer,
that.
you know, lentils you can incorporate into soups and things like
Yes.
that in winter, but in summer in salads.
Yeah.
And that's also where we have the low GI muesli from Vital as
Fantastic.
a reliable option.
Thank you very much. That was a very, very interesting topic to chat about. And Grandma, I'll be bringing you a whole bag of legumes and pulses to
And
have.
muesli.
And muesli. And lots of muesli. Thank you very much. Of course, remember to interact with Andrea on her Facebook page, Andrea du Plessis Vital Expert, to have all of your nutritional questions answered. Right now, over to you, Ilana.
Trust Vital for your family's health.